driving home from work. It's 10 till 5, so it kind of feels like I got off early or really late. I'm not sure which. Just want to say hi to all my Flatirons and my YouTubers and the followers and all the other people who think it makes sense to watch me do this. Oh man, I think I'm just a little bit loopy this morning. So, podcasts. Did a podcast a couple weeks ago with, or I should say recorded a podcast a couple weeks ago with Flatirons Tuning and Tasso from OTC Racing. I think we're going to do another one on Tuesday. So hopefully we get these things up. I think John Cooley, the manager at Flatirons, I think he's looking to, I think he's trying to figure out which platform he wants to post it up on. I have no idea. But either way, pretty excited about that, or at least looking forward to that. I just love to hear myself talk, so nothing sounds better than an hour-long podcast of me rambling on about, I don't even know, random automotive nonsense. But yeah. So, on that same note of podcast, there's a podcast channel called The Slip Angle I've been told about. Sorry about that. The cops trying to get us. But there's a Slip Angle channel podcast, and I think Keith was telling me about it. I don't know. I think Adam Trebay is one of the guys who's like one of the commentators or whatever. Anyway, today I listened to JC Meynet or the guy who races the 2006 Track Subies. I got to meet him at Bunwillow. Pretty chill dude, pretty chill guy. Sounds like he does all the work on his own car, which I think is pretty cool. Background in motorcycle racing and got into car racing, and I guess he's been doing time attack since 2007. So that's pretty cool. Definitely something, and listening to his current power setup's pretty cool too. Kind of makes it feel attainable. So definitely check that out. I think it was episode 248. I have no idea. I'm just making shit up now. But yeah, one of the things he talked about is the thing I want to talk about, and that's Aero. Gino may or may not know, Flatirons Tuning came out with a couple of partnered with 9 Lives Racing earlier this year, and did a couple of spoilers, one for the GD and one for the GR. The GD was like 68 inches wide, since that's actually the width of the car, so that fits within rolls. And then the GR was 70 inches wide. I believe Scotty Musgrove has ran that one before. But yeah, so talk about Aero. I set my car up personally with the anticipation of Aero. With my autocross background, I kind of like my cars to be loose, like oversteery at lower speeds, say like under 50 miles an hour. I like to trail brake into turns, even though you can probably watch my driving and be like, God, you don't trail brake? I do like to trail brake into turns, so getting some of that stability is important to me. But and the nice thing about a spoiler is it can take that, you can set a car up that can behave like that, so it performs well at low speed cornering, and then you can put it on a car and then set it up where it doesn't get so crazy at high speed stuff. It's like, take my Prelude for example. That thing is way oversprung street touring car at like 65 miles an hour. You initiate into a turn, you do anything other than full throttle at 65, it wants to get sideways. So the Subaru is not quite that aggressive. but still pretty aggressive. I mean, I run a big 27 mil rear sway bar. I run a parent front sway bar in the softest setting. I do kind of play with those. You know, I have kind of dialed back the rear a little bit. Run pretty aggressive alignment, I'd say. You got about 8 1/4 degrees positive caster. I run about 4.5 degrees negative camber up front. 3.5 degrees negative camber in the rear. I do run 0 toe in the rear, but I do run skosh toe in on the front. So anyway, a lot of the toe in thing is for my mid corner performance, you know, kind of once it's already tracking. That being said, I blew my motor up in La Junta, my last motor, my 4th motor, which is my stock EJ205, in La Junta probably 6 weeks ago now. And while I was there, a couple other Subaru owners were there. Dan Walker was one of them. I think that's his name. He's got a black 04, 05, I think it's an 05 STI. And I said, hey, I know it's kind of, and I run the big gurney flap on mine. I run it at a pretty steep angle, but I also have a big front splitter, and was running 56.3s or something at that track, which is what the TT1 cars run, and I was in a TT4 trim. So for as little as you would think the Aero could make a difference, definitely had it set up on the aggressive side for that track. Anyway, back to Dan's car. I asked him as I came in, I'll help you real quick, 5 minutes. We'll have that spoiler swapped out, just the whole trunk. Just take your trunk off, your STI GD trunk off. We'll swap my GD trunk on. And then see what you think about driving a car with a spoiler. Now, he's a decent driver, I think. He's been auto crossing, and he does pretty good at the PPIR, time attacks, and so he's pretty good at the high speed. Hunta's a track he's familiar with, so I wasn't sure how much speed he was going to get out of it, especially with as aggressive as I had it set up for me. And we kind of just threw it on, and he just, literally, we got the trunk on, he filled it up with gas, and then took off for that run. I don't think he got any faster that first session, but he noticed a drag, a little bit of a drag penalty, I think, in the sense that he said that his like initiating into a turn, like say in turn 1 there, wasn't as high as what he thought it would be, but his exit was a lot higher. So even if he had a drag penalty or whatever, he was noticing higher exit speeds in the sense that the car was kind of holding it down. So after I talked to him about kind of how the car felt, about what the car was doing, I asked him if he would let me make some adjustments to his shocks. So made some adjustments, actually stiffened up the rear quite a bit, and then I stiffened up the front a little bit. The only reason I stiffened up the front a little bit was, sounded like to me it was already a little bit on the low side. And then, and I did suggest to everybody earlier that day, all the Subaru people, that I personally was going to run softer settings, and I did, and I'm glad I did. But even still, I think for his setup, he needed a little bit off of that to kind of help support the car at speed, you know, to basically stiffen the compression up. But in the rear, what I was trying to simulate is essentially kind of like my rear bar setup, in the sense where I was trying to tighten up his compression in the rear of his car so that it felt a little bit more oversteering at the low speed, and then kind of brought it back to a more stable speed at the high end. And that was based on just some feedback he had. And I've been running the spoiler, and you know, I feel like Spring Racer kind of anticipated for it, and but ultimately I made those adjustments. He went out, drove them, felt like he was getting faster, and by this point everybody was getting slower. It was getting the hottest part of the day. So I talked to him a little bit about like strategy with the spoiler, you know, about trying to push hard to carry speed into that one turn, about how there's really I think at La Junta only one turn that really going to benefit from the spoiler. It's a real simple track, And so he went out on his last session after the adjustments, after kind of acclimated to it, and of course, and then talking about strategy. And then the hottest part of the day, when absolutely, like I said, nobody was going faster past that third session. At the end of the day, he ended up running 0.3 faster. Not a huge amount, but like I said, this is one of those tracks where it's really only one turn where you're going to be carrying a lot of that speed, and that the spoiler really helps. And kind of I had to get his car into, and himself a little bit too, into the idea that you're trying to dial in the rear end so it's a little bit more wild, and then if you set it up conservative, or you can set it up, conservative is the word I would use. If you set it up conservative, when you go to drive it out there, when you add a big wing, it's gonna feel more understeery, and that's not necessarily the complaint he had. The complaint he described to me was that the car felt, he actually said the front end felt like it didn't have as much grip, which is kind of what you'd expect, but I wanted to actually change parts of it. You would think stiffening the front shocks wouldn't actually help the grip, and in some cases, if I was adjusting my car and I wanted a little bit more front grip, I would actually soften the front end up a little bit on compression. But in this case, it felt like what I really needed to do was take a lot of that, not necessarily grip away, like add a lot of like support in the rear shocks, and then add some up to the front too to kind of help, so that's not understeery because it's so soft. Kind of give it that dynamic compression feel. So it all worked out, and he was really happy with the spoiler and stuff. But one of the things, back to the podcast earlier, that JC was saying was that a lot of people give him shit about how big the wings are, and you see like the old TC, the Papadakis, I think that was a Papadakis TC, but the old TC with a big spoiler on the hood and then a spoiler on the trunk. You're like, well, isn't that a front-wheel drive car? And some of the fastest cars in Time Attack right now are front-wheel drive cars. And the way that JC put it is, if you're going downhill, coasting downhill with no, not accelerating at all, you would still use the Aero. And so people get in this hang-up that, because I have a rear-wheel drive car, I need to focus more on rear aero, and because I have a front-wheel drive car, I need to focus on less rear aero. And I mean, honestly, the opposite couldn't be truer. So much of the drivetrain, the way I phrase it is, the drivetrain to me changes like your end behavior, like your corner exit behavior, and then, but the rest of it, I mean, corner entry, so many of these other things, the Aero is really playing a big part into it. You do have, car, like vehicular layouts have certain things where, an all-wheel drive car typically is a little bit more understeery on turn in, or a front-wheel drive car might be, a rear-wheel drive car especially is going to be really kind of more balanced, where the rear tires are doing some of the work and the front tires doing some of the work, but ultimately all that stuff's set in suspension. Anyway, long story short, when you set up your car so like in this case, say like one of my buddies is setting up his WRX, or he's just eyeballing coilovers, thinking about rates and stuff, and I think people really should take that approach to move to the spoiler, as long as it's legal for whatever what they're trying to do. And the big thing about the spoiler is that when you set your car up, kind of have that anticipation in mind. Just because you're putting a spoiler on the rear doesn't mean it's gonna hurt your front end grip, because it doesn't. Does it change the balance of the car? Absolutely, but it's certainly not the end all. Like, you can't think about it like that. So in a lot of cases, people are running, say, stock sway bars, but, dialed in coilovers. Sometimes at an Aero, I don't know if a spoiler, it might. Sometimes at an Aero can be corrected, can be adjusted with like a bigger rear sway bar. But I don't know if that's really accurate because the sway bars really only act on, you know, turning forces. However, I mean, if you think about the fact that maybe you're at your low speed stuff, you're initiating into a turn, the sway bar is doing that. But when you're going straight down the track, the spoiler is what's helping a lot, and then kind of the initiation. So if you add a spoiler, you know, maybe one size up or the next stiffness up in your rear sway bar might be something to try. But anyway, that's all the time I got, and I know I talked your ears off, so thanks for stopping in. Subscribe, like. We take Cheez-Its. Try to avoid the spicy stuff because it usually will put me out at the track, but if you see me at the track, just chuck a Cheez-It at me. I'll probably try and eat it. I'm a strong believer in the 5-second rule, so it's got to be like in a puddle of brake fluid or oil before I want you to cheese it off the ground. But yeah, well, I'll see you guys tomorrow.